Our first story starts when a neighbor comes by to visit Nasreddin, and he asks him if he can borrow his donkey. He says, Nasreddin, I want to go into town, and so can I borrow your donkey? And Nasreddin, he didn't really want to lend out his donkey, and so but he didn't want to seem rude, and so he said to his neighbor, actually, I already lent out my donkey, and then right then, suddenly from behind a wall, there came out a loud, hee-haw! And so the neighbor was like, what? You lied to me, the neighbor exclaimed. Your donkey is actually just right there behind the wall. Nasreddin was appalled, and he said, I feel so insulted. Who are you going to believe, a donkey or your teacher? Sometimes the best lessons come through silliness and humor. That is, through the skewered truth of shared laughter. That's the idea behind the stories of Nasreddin. He's a wise teacher, but also a fool in his story. So there's this one story about Nasreddin. He was getting up to deliver a sermon, and as he did, he asked the congregation, do you know what I'm going to say today? And they, of course, said no. So he responded, I have no desire to speak to people who don't even know what I will be talking about. And then he left. The people were very confused. I mean, imagine if I did such a thing to you. So they thought they would try again. They invited him back the next day, and then this time he asked the question again, do you know what I'm going to be talking about? And this time the people they'd learned, so they said, yes. To which he replied, well, since you already know what I'm going to say, I won't waste any of our time. And he left. They were so confused and frustrated, but they decided to try one more time. They knew he was a wise teacher, so they invited him to come back to their pulpit one last time. And this time he asked them the same question, do you know what I'm going to say? And the people were prepared. So this time, and they were clever. So this time one half of the room said yes, and the other half of the room said no. And so Nasreddin said, well, the half of the room who know what I'm going to say can just go ahead and inform the other half of the room that don't know what I'm going to say. And then he left. So that story, it goes well with this next one. So Nasreddin, he was in a bazaar with a large group of his followers behind him. Whatever Nasreddin did, his followers immediately, they did it too. So every few steps, Nasreddin would stop and shake his hands in the air and touch his feet and then jump up and down saying, hoo, 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 hoo. And then his followers, they would do exactly the same things, like jump up in the air and hoo, 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 hoo. So one of the merchants that was actually one of Nasreddin's friends, he came up to him quietly asked him, like, what are all of these people doing, my friend? Why are they all imitating you? Nasreddin replied, well, I've become something of a Sufi sheikh. They are actually my murids, that's the spiritual seekers. I'm helping them reach enlightenment. His friend was like, well, how do you know when they've reached enlightenment? Nasreddin replied, well, that's easy. Every morning I count them, and then the ones who have left, they are the ones that have reached enlightenment. Okay, before I tell one last story, I have a question for you, which is, doesn't it seem like since we are never leaving the house and thus we can't leave anything somewhere else, that we shouldn't be losing things anymore, right? But somehow that's not how it works. Somehow it seems like every day we have something that we can't find that has totally disappeared. My kids are always wondering, where did their shoes go? I'm like, well, we literally have not been anywhere else. They must be here. All right, last story. It's along this theme. So once, A neighbor found Nasreddin keenly examining the ground. And he says, "What are you doing, Nasreddin?" And Nasreddin replied, "I'm looking for a ring that I lost." So the neighbor got down and he helped him sort through the grass. And finally he turned to Nasreddin and he said, "Okay, well, do you know where exactly around here you were standing when you dropped your ring?" And Nasreddin replied, "Oh, yes, actually, I was standing inside the house in the kitchen." But why are you looking out here outside if you lost the thing inside your house?" Nasreddin replied, "Well, the light is much better out here." Thus ends our Nasreddin stories.